Was this a political prosecution?
No, no. There are multiple political leaders currently being charged with various charges. I mean, you've got Senator Bob Menendez in New Jersey, who has been charged for a very good reason. The guy is corrupt and had gold bars. This is a case that was brought forward because a presidential candidate at the time violated the public trust by working with a media organization to cover up a woman's story. And, there's many problems that Democrats even had with this particular case. But is he guilty? The jury just found him so. I thought for sure there was going to be one person on there who believed, like many do, that Donald Trump could go out in the street and shoot someone and he wouldn't be responsible. But surprisingly, these were ordinary people who looked at the facts and came to the decision that he is guilty. So now he is. He's going to try to spin it every different way. But for the moderate Americans living in the swing states, his reaction seems completely unhinged.
But certainly, from the perspective of Republicans, this was a Democratic prosecutor who ran on a sort of ticket saying that he was going to indict Donald Trump in New York. The judge had donated to the Democrats, to Joe Biden, and his daughter also had worked on the campaign, I believe. These are Democratic politicians who are sort of celebrating Trump's conviction. The jury was selected from an area of New York which votes very, very heavily against Donald Trump and in favor of the Democrats. So from all of those different angles, to many Americans looking at this conviction today, this was a political prosecution.
Yeah, but in that same vein, then Bob Menendez should have a jury on his side because he's a Democrat. I mean, this is the trouble with the undermining of our judicial system that we've done here in America. I think it's dangerous that we've undermined a lot of our institutions, and both political parties have been responsible for some of this because of their political short-term gains. Look, I think we need to look at judicial reform in a way that we're going to have people that both sides of the aisle can support in these very important roles instead of politicizing things. Is it in the same case, you've got, someone who is supposedly on Trump's side who's overseeing a case in Florida. So there's probably a lot of skepticism from the Democrats. But if a jury rules him not guilty or guilty, we have to stand by that jury or we are undermining the rule of law that Donald Trump has said he's on the side of. And in many ways, I am for law and order. I never was one of those Democrats, and there are Democrats who were saying, that we needed to end policing in different ways. We need to have rule of law. That is fundamental to our, democracy. It's fundamental to our republic. And so this is how that worked. If we can shore up some of those institutions and make sure that people on both sides of the aisle have more trust in those institutions, evaluate whether these justices should be donating, any of these judges should be donating. The Supreme Court Justice, Alito has had his wife flying the American flag upside down. I think there's a lot of questions about that, same as there would be if there was a liberal justice flying the Palestinian flag. There are a lot of questions right now, but the truth that we all know is that Donald Trump, by a jury of his peers, was found guilty, and that we should respect.
But juries don't always get it right. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but look to the O.J. Simpson case where I think everyone or most people conclude that they probably got that wrong. So juries aren't, it's not a perfect system. And I've been doing various interviews today. One person, Alan Dershowitz, the famous lawyer, he compared this trial to McCarthyism, but also to some of those kind of witch hunts and trials in the Deep South during the era of Jim Crow, where you had these all-white juries prosecuting African Americans for trumped up charges. So, juries aren't exactly always perfect. And if you look throughout American history, and political biases do, come into play, particularly when the political consequences of convicting Donald Trump is so significant. If you send Donald Trump to prison, that could sway the outcome of the presidential election. So, juries don't always get it right.
I'm glad you brought up O.J. Simpson. You know, the O.J. Simpson case, I was in school in Galesburg, Illinois, and our teachers thought that it was so important that they rolled televisions, the old televisions, into our classrooms and had us watch that verdict. And, you know, that was, the question was, is it beyond the shadow of doubt, right? Like, is there, and they thought that there was enough doubt that they didn't convict. Now, you know, do ordinary people think, you know, he unfortunately got away with murder? I do. I absolutely do. And I think that, you know, it is a shame that the prosecution wasn't able to prosecute that case in a way in which there was not a shadow of doubt. If you look back at how it was prosecuted, I mean, there was so much bias in it. There's always been bias in our system. To believe that there is not bias would be to just, you know, throw out like human nature. But the thing is, you have the right to appeal. And the trouble for Trump is he continues to undermine the system over and over, going after the judge, going after the jury members, going after these people in a way that is really, unfortunately, dangerous. Right now, we have so many people who are living under a MAGA gaze, and it's not all Republicans. My family are Republicans. It's certain Republicans who believe that he could do no harm are under this gaze, and they believe that, you know, this is weaponized and it is awful. And it is dangerous for Republicans to follow those talking points. And I would point to, if Senator Menendez is convicted guilty, I will promise you that every Democrat, maybe there will be few, but the Democrats will say he was guilty as charged. And that's the trouble, is like when we want to hand pick and we don't want to say, like, there's an appeals process. He can go through the appeals process. If he believes that this is not justice, he can go through that process. He can go through the process of all of these other criminal cases. But when he has done something, he has silenced a woman, he has had people who were his allies forever. David Pecker is still a supporter of his. These folks who are coming out with evidence that show that, yes, he did pay to bury a story, then the jury evaluated it and they found that he was guilty. And so in that situation, for the Republicans to stand by him, I believe is dangerous. I do think that Joe Biden is vulnerable this election, but the way in which the small percentage of the Republicans who are getting to the polls are in the primary, in the caucuses and in the primaries, you know, standing by Trump, it is dangerous because you basically have created a situation in which you are that close to someone who has proven he is irresponsible from assuming office again. We have no idea what he'd do for with the NATO alliance. We have no idea what he'd do, you know, with the various high-profile positions. I mean, attorney general. I was talking to many former Trump people who were saying we have no idea who would serve as his attorney general. And if they cannot find responsible Republicans to serve in his administration, they should be calling that out right now. I would, if it was my party. I am honest about Joe Biden's faults. I believe that Republicans should be honest about Donald Trump's faults.
So if the Republicans had elected a district attorney in Texas who said, he campaigned, he said, look, I'm going to prosecute Joe Biden, and the judge had donated to Donald Trump, and the jury were all selected in a heavily Trump supporting area, and they convicted Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi and so on, you wouldn't be frustrated about that. I think many Republicans, see this as a political prosecution of their presidential candidate, and it's more significant than this senator that you mentioned in Boston or wherever.
It's not more significant. I mean, that's a sitting senator who actually had control.
But this is the presidential candidate. That is more significant than the senator.
So going back to, should any president be prosecuted if they did something that is outside of the law? That is precisely in America why we have the Constitution that we have and why we have the rule of law. We do not have a king. We believe our president should be abiding by the same laws as every other citizen in this country. So yes, absolutely, any president should be subject to the law. I worked with Barack Obama, and when I worked with him, I was so proud of working with someone who was outside of the establishment, who was someone who really held himself to a high standard. And I can say, like, there were times when I remember there was an incident, and it seems like it seems so small now, but he was not wearing an American flag pin at one point during the campaign. And he was asked, why aren't you wearing an American flag pin? And he just explained, well, I don't think I have to wear my Pride for America on my lapel every day. And that became a huge scandal, right? After that, of course, people started turning against us. And I remember he got us all on the phone and he said, I am never going to be a perfect person. And I'm not going to be a perfect president if I'm elected. But none of you are going to be perfect people. All we can do is try to do better. And that is, I think, that moral compass that is missing right now in our presidential politics. And it is inexcusable, because I believe if we want to hold this republic, if we want to hold America and for the values we stand for, we have to hold our own accountable, and we have to believe that everyone is under the same laws.
But these charges that were put against Trump, many people say they were basically trumped up charges. He wasn't actually convicted for the hush money. It was actually that was a misdemeanor. They sort of elevated it to a felony case in which they were basically saying it was a campaign finance kind of misunderstanding, or he sort of filed his campaign.
It wasn't a misunderstanding.
Right, that's the wrong.
It was illegal contributions to a campaign because he was paying to bury a woman's story.
Misfiling of his campaign finance contributions, right? This was what the felony was. So I think to many people, they see this as, a very nuanced. This happened 10 years ago. This is very complicated charges. It seems like if this wasn't Donald Trump, then this probably wouldn't have happened. This case wouldn't have happened. He was investigated by other bodies, and other prosecutors chose not to prosecute this case. Alvin Bragg, the Democrat who ran on, saying that I'm going to indict Donald Trump, did prosecute the case. So I think the argument that many people make is, look, these charges were specifically, generated because Alvin Bragg wanted to take down Donald Trump, and the Democrats therefore wanted to take down Donald Trump.
Look, for people to say this is complicated, it's pretty simple. He had an affair with a porn star. He didn't want the American public to know that, especially in light of all of the other issues that he had. And so he paid someone to bury that story. That is Americans, there's a lot of things that are complicated, but sex and politics are not complicated. He paid to cover up a story before a presidential election. We should not allow that for any leader. I have problems with Bill Clinton. I came of age when Bill Clinton got away with having an affair with an intern, someone who is much younger, and somehow America named the scandal after her and not him. That's for so many reasons so messed up. I think Americans actually do understand this. I think the problem is, and you talked about these trumped up charges, and people are talking about them trumped up charges. They're saying that because Trump is saying that, because he has a major megaphone, and because every Republican who ran scared when the Capitol was under assault, every Republican is standing up and defending him. I have to say, Larry Hogan, he is someone I have great respect for. He came out yesterday and just said, we have to listen to the jury. We have to just follow law and order, which is what we say we do. And you had Republicans saying, you have lost this election. It's like, oh my God, I think in the course of time, in the course of history, those who have moral clarity when their party or their country is under assault by someone who, make no mistake about it, this is not a criminal prosecution against Americans. It is a criminal prosecution against one person, Donald Trump, who is a TV reality star, a bravado guy. But this is a prosecution against him because he did something unfortunate. The fact that he's gotten average Americans to think that this is a charge against them and they're giving him money, that is so messed up. But at the end of the day, can those $30+ million influence the 10,000 people in Michigan, the 10,000 people in Pennsylvania, the 10,000 people in Wisconsin that really matter? I think how they react to this will matter. And so far, how Trump is coming out and saying absolute nonsense and how they're talking about how they're going to lock up their political opponents, it's not going to age well.
Do you want to see Donald Trump in prison?
I want to see any political leader, anyone who's running in politics, anyone who believes that they should serve their community, I want to see all of them know that they have to follow the same laws that they set for all of the rest of the American public. Too often, and I'd say this is true of Democrats and Republicans, they don't. And that's despicable. If one thing could happen out of this, where our political leaders would be held to the same account that we're held, I think that that's a win for the American people.
But with respect, do you want to see Donald Trump in prison? I'm going to ask the question again. Yes or no?
Honestly, I don't really care. I believe Joe Biden's going to end up winning this election because Donald Trump is a terrible candidate. And what he does in his retirement is really none of my business or worry. I hope that the women who he silenced can have some peace. I hope that people don't get silenced by someone having enough money that they can pay a media establishment to bury it. It's sickening to me. And as a girl who grew up in Galesburg, Illinois, I think it should be sickening to every American who doesn't want money to rule the system, but instead wants good ideas and good people to actually have a voice and be able to say and do what I believe the American dream is, anything we want with these freedoms.
I don't know if you've seen this clip of Joe Biden today. He was asked by a reporter about, was this a political prosecution? And he turned to her and he smiled. It looked almost like a laugh, and then he walked off. I don't know if you've seen the clip or not, but what do you think about that reaction from the president? Many people are criticizing him, sort of almost celebrating the conviction of his political opponent.
I didn't like when President Biden came out with the challenge to Donald Trump for the debate when he said, "I know you're free on Wednesdays," because I think that undermines our system. I have not seen the clip, so I don't know, whether if it was like an actual, if he could even hear the question. I mean, a lot of these times when people are shouting things very quickly, I've been there, you don't actually know what someone's saying. I didn't like it. I think we need to have leaders who find more grace under these really serious moments. I think Joe Biden would be well served for those 10,000 people in Michigan, 10,000 people in Wisconsin, 10,000 people in Pennsylvania to have grace and to know that this is separate. Look, I think Joe Biden feels like this is personal. And in many ways, Donald Trump has made it personal. I mean, Eric Trump also has all sorts of problems. So do all the Trump kids. But Hunter Biden has problems. I mean, Hunter Biden has lots of problems. And Donald Trump has spent his time attacking his only remaining son from his first wife, who died in a car accident with his baby girl daughter. So I think, unfortunately, in these moments, too often our political leaders are in this cycle where it's very personal and they don't see the greater picture, which is this is about a republic that we want to survive. This is about the American dream. This is about everything that our men and women who have fought for our country are working towards. And I believe that that is rule under law, and that we make the laws, we have to act under them. Every president is accountable to the law, and it is very important that justice be served.
Thank you so much, Johanna, for joining us.
Yeah,
Always
it's wonderful.
enjoy the debate. Thank you.
Yeah, great to join.